Hello, Zysos here. I am just letting you all know while this video for many people is coming out before the Black Widow pack actually comes out, it is actually out in Australia and I have bought it. The release date was the 3rd of April. That was the release date in Australia, and because I am Australian and buy from an Australian store, I actually own the pack, and thus I'll be playing with it. Because in my view, this pack is out. Although I understand that I understand it was delayed due to COVID-19 in America, so some of you may not want to watch this week's stream because I'll be using a bunch of cards that you don't have access to, and you may not want to see them. But if you're okay seeing the cards, because I am going to go over them, just to quickly catch everyone up, because some people are probably watching from overseas. So I will be going over them, so you will get to know the cards before we play, just as an FYI. Anyway, without any more delays, let's jump across to Tabletop Sim. I currently can't use the normal deck building. I can't use Marvel CDB because it's not out in America. Thus, it's not because it's not out in America. The card game DB doesn't have the images, which means the other programs like Octagon and card game and the Marvel CDB, which use the images from card game DB because they're FFG official, don't have them yet. So you'll notice primarily on these ones, these cards here are kind of a pretty low quality. Like some of them are alright. They're normally the ones that had actual spoilers. This one here is really, really cut together. Because I'm pretty sure that's the corner from Widow's Bite cut over the swimsuit to... It is correct, that is the energy and whatnot, but the image didn't have it. So anyway, let's just quickly go over what this is. Obviously it's an aggression Black Widow deck. The important things for Black Widow: her 15 cards obviously, and her hero ability, and we'll go over this in a sec. So Black Widow's alter ego, Natasha Romanoff. Whenever you play a prep, limit once per phase, draw a card. Okay, so preps are a new card type. They're like cancels and whatnot, but you play them as an upgrade and then they stick around and you activate them later. So examples of preps, this one here is very similar to Preemptive Strike. It's a little bit stronger because it's an attack, not a defense, and it's also, because it's an attack, it can be used when you're not being targeted. There's something else about this. Oh yeah, when a boost card is turned up, as opposed to when an attacking boost card is turned up, which is what Preemptive Strike is. So this works on schemes too. So that's its acrobatics. That's one of the preps in the hero set. There's also Grappling Hook, which cancels the effects of a treachery card. This is important because it's all the effects, not the... You do it when you reveal, but you cancel all the effects, so that includes Surge. Widow's Bite: when a minion enters play, deal 2 damage to it and stun it. Okay, so that's the preps that are in the set, and there's some more over here which we'll get to in a sec. Then we'll flip. The hero side just says whenever you're on the hero side and you trigger a prep, there's no limit on this per turn, you deal the damage to an enemy. It's not an attack, so it doesn't trigger Retaliate, and it doesn't trigger Retaliate. It's not affected by guard, and it doesn't have to be the same enemy that the prep was triggering against. So like you can Widow's Bite to hit 2 on one thing and then hit another thing for 1, stuff like that. Now the only other things left in the hero set if you have a bunch of preps, when a soldier becomes cheaper, otherwise he's that's all his ability does, so he's just a 2/2 with 4 hit points. One consequential on both. This is for prep removal and a confuse. That's a very strong card. It actually really helps. The reason I'm playing Black Widow Aggression is because I feel like this card and the 2 fraught here are enough that you can keep the threat down such that you can just go all in on damage, which I feel like solo aggression currently, that's what you're doing, because they have like no threat for potential outside of Miss Marvel, because of just the shenanigans you can do with chase them down. Anyway, Dens of Death. This one is fairly interesting. It's a damage card, and it actually triggers 3 attacks. The first attack deals 1 damage, and then the second one does 2, and the third one does 3. So this is important because I have Jarnbjorn in here, so I can deal 3 Jarnbjorn triggers, but also deal 6 damage alongside that. It is kind of expensive, but so is Covert Ops. These 2 are really strong cards, I feel. This is more versatile, but less overall damage than, say, swinging web kick on Spider-Man. The versatility comes from the fact you can target very different things. In fact, with Jarnbjorn triggers, if you go for the full Jarnbjorn triggers, you could legitimately kill 6 things in a turn. Safe House just gets you a prep back from your discard, which is really strong. And these just pay 1 resource for preps. This gives you a defense, and when you trigger a prep, you can ready. Preparations, though, because they're mostly cancels, are really hard to trigger on your turn. They generally trigger it on the villain turn. So generally speaking, this will mean after you can defend and then still be ready on next turn, which is pretty good. Like, not the best thing going around, but it's pretty good. So let's start with the 3 resource cards. They're I feel like that's fairly obvious why I included those. They're strong cards. I put in Downtime and Endurance because it's a 9 HP free recover character, so that's just to make it more reliable to heal up and to not die, and that can be a problem, so that's why that's there. Now, Jarnbjorn, another thing I didn't mention, Acrobatics and Widow's Bite are both attacks, so you can get the attack on your hero, the attack on the Widow's Bite, and the attack on the Acrobatics, and the 3 attacks on Dance with Death. That's a lot of attacks. So I put in Jarnbjorn to try and build off of that, and that's why the 3 enhanced physiques are in here. I am trying to trigger Jarnbjorn as much as possible. This here is also in here for the same reason, although this is also a very strong card. If you have the Avenger, you can play this card, and it's exhaust this card to generate a wild resource. In solo, this is a better Helicarrier. I don't think there's much else I can really say on that. It's a new Black Widow card. Expect to see a lot of this in solo play going forward, at least while we're playing Avengers characters. Like, possibly after the Rise of the Red Skull box, we'll start getting characters that aren't Avengers, and then this will probably drop off a bit while people are playing the new stuff in there. But currently, the only character I wouldn't run this in is in solo is Miss Marvel. In multiplayer, you have to worry about it because it's unique, and it doesn't have the Helicarrier's ability to play on other people. But you'll just fight your friends for it. Someone will probably have a good reason to want to run it. Like, maybe you need a particular resource in Alter Ego, like, say, a Mental to trigger Superhuman Law Division. This is one of the few ways you could easily do that. Add that to your set. Lockjaw was added for fraught potential because while I say this is enough, I had Tigra and I had more than enough ways to deal with minions, so I didn't think that was doing anything, whereas this could potentially help. Mockingbird and Nick Fury are just for blocking attacks. Mockingbird blocks 2 for 3 as a cost, that's pretty good. Nick Fury costs 4, but then you get 3 back, so it's kind of like he's a 1-cost ally. Like not really, but close. And that's a valuable defense as well, alongside everything else he can do. I'm not cutting Valkyrie from any of my decks going for any of my aggression decks going forward. She's great even if you don't get her kicker, and better if you do. And it's not that hard most of the time. And 2 power of aggression was just so I had some more versatility. They still count as physicals for my Jarnbjorn if I need them, but they're also not physicals if I need not physicals. And considering how many physicals I have in this deck, I figured that was the right call. So I put in 2 uppercuts. I mostly just use them for physical. If I'm going to do damage, I'm going to prefer to try and get the Dance with Deaths down if I can, though occasionally you'll play it. It does allow you to hit 7 with Jarnbjorn, so that's good. That could easily be changed for something else, but I just haven't really felt like there's anything that's still a physical icon in aggression that I want currently. And there are some use cases like Masters of Evil, where you end up with a bunch of minions and you just need to be able to deal with them. So all these last few cards, the reason I've left them to last is these are the new preps. These are both the neutral preps in the pack and the 1 aggression prep. So this one here, Espionage, seems really good in Black Widow. Probably a little dicey outside. Because you can only play it if you have the spy trait. An important thing to note, I have the spy trait no matter what side I'm on. I can also get this for a little bit cheaper because I normally get it with my gauntlet, and I can sometimes draw a card because of it. It's one of the only preps that doesn't have a max. Both of these have max 1 per player. The hero set doesn't, but generally speaking, that was a limitation on the prep cards. There's this and one of the 2 Justice ones have it. So out of the 6 7. How many is it? No, 7. Out of the 7 non-Black Widow preparations, there's only 2 that don't have max 1 per player. So this one here, if a card surges, you draw 2 cards. It's also an interrupt, not a hero interrupt. A lot of preps are hero interrupts. So this can be triggered on Alter Ego. So sometimes you flip to Alter Ego, you get hit with an assault, it does nothing, so it surges. It specifically says that it surges, so that triggers this card, which is honestly kind of insane. Like you draw 2 cards for your next turn, so you have like a really big power turn because of it. Or because a card did nothing against you. It's also pretty good because like a lot of the scariest cards have surge on them, like the expert set, the exhaustion and under fire both have it. So like it gives you more cards to deal with the next turn to deal with that stronger effect, which is good. Target acquired. This is interesting. This I think will fit into quite a few decks because it's basic and because it does something that we didn't previously have the ability to do. And that is when a boost is turned face up, boost effect, you cancel the boost effect. So Mess of Things flips up and you're stunned, you're not stunned. Core doesn't exhaust you. A minion does, a weapon runner or a goblin thrall doesn't come into play. There's some pretty good options. So that is that. And next thing, lastly here, we have Counterattack. This is the aggression preparation. Still max 1 per player. This is a hero response. This is an attack. So this is another Jarnbjorn trigger. And it's after you take damage, and you always take damage from an enemy attack at some point. You can discard Counterattack to deal that damage back to the enemy that just attacked you. So you get hit by Rhino, maybe it's a charge attack, you get hit for like 5 or 7, or 8 or 9. I actually, in my first game playing an aggression deck like this, I actually got hit. The first time I got hit for 7, the second time I got hit for 8, and I just barely survived both because I was on, I didn't get my endurance down, and both times I triggered counterattack, and then immediately flipped and healed. And both times the counterattack was just super great. That's 15 damage. Obviously, Rhino hits hard. That's kind of the only thing he does. So it's stronger against Rhino, but there's generally going to be like 4, 5, 6 damage on an attack at some point that's going to hit you, and this just does that back to them, and that's pretty good for a 1-cost card. And that's not even counting the discounts that you get as Black Widow. So that's the whole deck, fairly in depth. So you should hopefully have a decent idea on the cards. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat or the comments if you're watching on YouTube. But I'm going to set up against Rhino here.